Okay, welcome to the fourth part of my video series for intermediate instrument flying. I'm a commercial pilot. My name is Vikas, and I'm multi-engine and single-engine instrument rated. So, in today's video, in the previous videos, we have covered how to intercept and track radials, how to do DME arcs, what are course reversals, the first two types of course reversals, basically. And today we'll be talking about holds. This is a very important topic as you will be doing holds for a lot of different purposes. The first major purpose is for ATC to provide separation with other aircraft. The next purpose is to, again, for course reversals, to align you with the proper course for any purpose, to go towards a landing runway or go towards the next part of the fix of the instrument procedure, or towards the approach or whatever. That's the second part, to align yourself with the correct instrument procedures. And the third part of a hold is basically maybe to burn fuel in case you have an emergency situation. You lose one of your engines, you have a lot of fuel. The bigger aircrafts have fuel dumping systems, but something like a Seneca or a Seminole or a DA-42, these don't have fuel dumping systems. So you go into a hold, burn some of your fuel, and come back to land. Okay, we'll talk about what is a hold, how does a hold look like on the chart, and how does it look out on the instruments, what are the important points of the hold, and how to do it correctly. Okay, let's start off. Let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, good. Holds. Now, let's talk about the basics of the hold. There is a inbound leg, which is towards a navigational aid or a fix in case of a GPS. This is your inbound. Remember, this is the most important leg. You cannot make any changes to the inbound leg. Literally any changes. It has to be perfectly straight. In case of winds, you have to correct for the wind and fly a perfectly straight inbound leg. Okay, that's your first leg, inbound leg. Then there's the outbound leg. Now, the outbound leg can bend a bit. You can bend the rules a bit because I'll tell you why. That's the next leg, the outbound leg. And in between these two, there's the first turn. This is the outbound turn. And between the outbound and the inbound, there's another turn, which is your inbound turn. Okay, the turns have to be standard rate and have to be 180 degrees. Okay, and now you have to know something called as the protected side. Now, what does this mean? What does protected side mean? If you stay on this side of the inbound leg towards outbound leg, you're protected from other traffic. ATC guarantees this. In case you drift because of winds towards the unprotected side, you're going head on into other traffic or away from the procedure. In case of procedure, you may be going head on into obstruction. So you always want to be on the protected side. That's why your outbound can be this or it can be this. When does it have to be like this? In case of winds. So that's why I said you can bend the outbound a bit. So basic is this. There's a fix, there's an inbound leg going towards the fix, there's an outbound leg going away from the fix, and there are inbound and outbound turns. This is the basic of a hold. Okay. Now, what are the three different entry procedures for a holds? The first one, the simplest one, the direct entry. How do you fly this? So there's a fix and there's an inbound. In this entry procedure, you just directly join the inbound somewhat like this. Now, there has to be a condition where you can do the direct, right? So you have to be in a position to join the direct fix. In the end of the video, we'll look at how we determine if it is direct entry or the different other types of entries by looking at our instruments. So you have to be in a position for a direct entry. You just directly join the inbound, and then it's fairly simple from there. You do the outbound turn, do the outbound leg, and continue on the hold. That's it. That's your direct entry. The next one is your teardrop entry. Okay. Now, how do you do a teardrop entry? The hold still remains the same. There's a fix. There's your inbound. There's your outbound turn. There's your outbound. There's your inbound turn. The hold still remains the same. And remember, your standard holding patterns are towards your right, and non-standard may be towards your left. And to determine if it's direct, teardrop, or whatever the other type of entry, you have to know if you're doing a standard right hand hold or a left hand hold. We'll talk about that when we're looking at the instrument how to determine what sort of hold you are doing. Okay, and then how do you do a teardrop entry? So for a teardrop entry, what you'll be doing is flying over the fix at a 30-degree angle to your inbound leg, then making a turn to intercept your inbound leg, and then go towards the fix, and then you continue the hold. This is a teardrop procedure. Okay, you know, it looks like a teardrop here, right? The third one will be a parallel entry. Now, how do you do this one? Again, your hold still remains the same. So in this, you're basically going to the fix. Once you're on the fix, you go on the inbound leg, but in the opposite direction. Okay. Once you've done that, then you make a turn towards the opposite. Instead of towards the right, make a turn towards the left. Make a turn, you come back, you intercept the inbound, and you continue on the hold. Does this look familiar? It looks familiar to your procedure turn, right? So that's your parallel entry, okay? These are the three types of entries for a hold. Now, how do you determine what sort of entry you need to do, right? It's a fairly simple technique. There's multiple techniques, but the simplest one I knew is called the pencil technique. What you do is, let me draw the instrument. You just keep a pencil on the instrument. Which instruments? Usually your HSI. If you have separate ones like your CDI and your heading, then you tune the proper course for whatever direction you're flying in on your CDI, and then keep your pencil on the CDI. Keep your pencil straight and level on the CDI. Then you tilt it towards the left or to the right by what sort of a hold you're doing. If you're doing a standard right hand hold, you lift the right hand side up by 20 degrees. So you're at an angle which is 180 minus 20. 180 minus 20 is what? 0, minus 20, which is 20 degrees. So it should look something like this. This is your CDI, whatever direction you're flying, doesn't matter. This is your center of the CDI. You just place your pencil first parallelly. Once you've done that, if it's a right hand hold, you lift the pencil up 20 degrees on the right hand side. Correct. Once you've done that, and this is how it looks, right? So your CDI now is divided into 3 zones. Zone number 1. Let me do it on some other color. Zone number 2 and zone number 3. This was our zone number 1. You can look, we have 3 different types of entries, and your CDI is divided into 3 different zones. You just look at these zones and know what is your outbound leg, not inbound. Remember, not your inbound. Wherever the outbound leg falls, that will be the type of procedure. So let's say ATC gives something like an instruction like this: number 370 Charlie Alpha, fly, hold over Foxtrot Lima Yankee VOR 270 radial, standard, right turns, 1 minute legs. Depending on what your heading is, okay? Depending on what your heading actually your flying is, your outbound will fall into the different zones, right? So depending on what zone it falls into, let's say 270 somewhere over here for you in the first zone, the first and the smallest zone, you'll be making a teardrop entry. In case your outbound falls in the second zone, you'll be making a parallel entry. And if it falls in the third zone, you just make a direct entry. So how do you remember these? The smallest one is always the teardrop. The next smallest one is the parallel. And the last one, the biggest one, is the direct entry. Now, this is for a standard one. In case they give you left turns, in case of a standard, the same procedure, instead of lifting your pencil up on the right side, lift it up on the left side. Okay, so you lift it up on the left side by 20 degrees. And again, you have your 3 zones. Looking at what zone your outbound lies again, you determine what sort of entry you'll be doing. There are different procedures for each of these direct, teardrop, and parallel entries. What headings you need to be flying, what should it look on the CDI. We will cover this on a different video, on a different day. I would like to teach this on my simulator so that you get a real world experience of how the hold looks and how you fly the hold. And we were talking about the outbound not being straight. When does that happen? That happens in case of winds. In case the winds are pushing you, as I told you, you have to be straight and perfect on the inbound. So you correct for the winds on your outbound leg. It's impossible to correct for in the standard rate turns. You're not supposed to make any wind corrections. You just have to be standard rate. So you just make your corrections on the outbound. So if you just make one time the correction, you're not correcting for the turns. So you have to make 3 times correction on the outbound and 1 time correction on the inbound. Okay. If you guys remember this much, when we go into the simulator sessions, it becomes much more easier. And you just look at the instrument, determine what sort of entry it is, and then I explain the procedure of each of the entry patterns. That's for holds. Now, once you've known the holds, once you know how to enter into a hold, we come back to our course reversal, right? You just enter into the hold, as I told in the previous video, start going inbound towards whatever your next phase of flight is. That comes back to the third type of course reversals with holes, right? And that should give you a basic idea of what our holes are, okay? In the next video, we'll talk about ILS approaches, and let's put all of the things with whatever we learned till now: radial interceptions, DME arcs, course reversals, and holes, all of that consolidated and construct two different instrument approaches by looking at the charts. So you get a very different idea of how these work, right? So thank you guys for joining in. That's it for today.